Okay, we have reached the 3 o'clock hour. I want to welcome you all to the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission meeting today, Tuesday, February 4th. And I will call this meeting to order. And Susan, will you call the roll, please?
Okay, Commissioner Jason Greeno.
I am here.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Commissioner Altman.
Here.
Commissioner Borges.
Is not here today.
Okay, and Commissioner Dooley.
Here.
Okay, and Chair Short.
I am here. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, would you all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Excuse me. Now we are at our public comment period. Anyone wishing to make public comment regarding matters either on or off the agenda and within the commission's jurisdiction may do so at this time. However, the commission is not permitted to act on non-agendized item. Is there public comment? Sir, thank you. Turn your mic on.
Hi there. My name is Adam Goldstein. I've been living here part-time for a little while now, more full-time. I come from a travel and transportation background myself as an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I love the detail that was in the report that was attached to the agenda, and I just wanted to maybe emphasize and add one more thing that I'd love to help out with and see discussed, which is the opportunity that Pebble Beach Drive has as a center of tourism. And I think with some shifts to the way the road is laid out, maybe creating more of a boardwalk type of feel like you might find in Santa Monica or somewhere like that, it could become more of a draw, both for people locally here in town and for travel and tourism from other places. So to the extent that I can be helpful, or if that's already being discussed, let me know. And otherwise, I just hope that's a helpful seed to plant.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Appreciate your comment. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on to our next agenda item, which is the election of the chairperson and the vice chairperson. Typically, we alternate city and county. So
Motion for Jason Greeno for chair.
we have a motion for Jason Greeno to be chair. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second. Any other nominations? Okay, go ahead and close the nominations and go ahead and take the roll. Susan, if you would.
Okay, Commissioner Altman.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno.
Yes.
Commissioner Dooley.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes.
And just a quick question, is Jesse Robertson sitting in for Tasha, so I know?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and then I'll call your vote too.
We haven't adjourned yet, Susan, so
Okay,
that'll be after the next item. So
okay,
thank you.
thank you.
So with that, we have unanimously voted Mr. Greeno as being chair. And if I'm not mistaken, we switch right now.
All right. Thank you for your vote of confidence, everybody. With that, I'll open nominations for vice chair.
I'm going to nominate Joey Borges because he's not here. I was joking.
You could.
I'll nominate Chris Howard for vice chair.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Could you please poll the vote?
Yes, Commissioner Dooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Altman,
Yes.
Chair Greeno.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to our next agendized item, we will move on to our consent agenda. Oh, actually, we adjourn as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Transportation Commission. We have one item on our consent agenda, and that is the meeting minutes from December 18th.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please, let's do public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item? All right, seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the commission for a vote.
And Susan, that was Darren Short that made the motion. Altman that seconded.
Thank you. Commissioner Dooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Altman,
Yes.
Jesse Robertson.
I will abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chair Greeno.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to our first item for policy administrative. It's our 2024 Regional Transportation Plan and Mitigation Negative Declaration.
Good afternoon. We've been working on this project for about a year, and in this cycle, we have opted for a regional transportation plan mini update and not a full expansive update. A significant part of that decision was because of funding. We didn't have enough money to do a full update. A lot of the rural regions, some of the rural regions are doing exactly what we're doing. I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago, but they're doing exactly what we're doing. We don't have a lot of new development. Nobody's proposing new roads. We don't have new infrastructure that's being proposed. We don't have additional passing lanes on the state highway system. We don't have any capacity increasing projects. So we opted for this mini update. In 4 years, we will be doing a more full update that will also include an environmental document attached to the document. It's not an environmental document that's about projects. It's an environmental document about the overall regional transportation plan. So we've been, working hard with Green Dot Transportation Solutions. Jeff Schwein has a short presentation, and we have everything. We've been working with all of your staff, the tribes. We have information from the airport, the harbor, all of the folks who are involved in transportation. We have comments from our neighboring counties that we seek comments from them and include it all in one document, and that's the RTP update. It's a mandated update. We have it lined with city and county planning, so they're on an 8-year cycle. The city and county are both on an 8-year cycle. This is on a 4-year cycle to align with their 8-year cycle. Our mandate is no longer than 5 years. So as has many regions, we pushed it back to a 4-year cycle so we can keep in sync with the planning needs of the city and county. It helps to keep them in line with their timing also. So Jeff is here. Jeff, do you want to walk through the presentation?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Tamara. So, can you guys see the presentation okay? Great. Okay, so, yeah, I'm Jeff Schwein, Green Dot Transportation Solutions. We've done a lot of work in the county, in the region up there for different agencies, some tribal entities, and of course for the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission. So pretty familiar with some of the projects in the past, and we worked with the Technical Advisory Committee on project lists for the city, the county, the harbor, Caltrans, and tribal entities. And I'll just walk through a quick presentation. It's not very long, but it kind of lays out the reason that we do a regional transportation plan and sort of the benefits and then the different elements that are within it. So a long-range transportation plan, we are planning for 20-year horizon. It's like the general plan for transportation projects. So we plan for 20 years, but then we update it every 4 years because that aligns with the actual funding that we can reasonably assume is going to be available the longer range projects are harder to assume that we're going to have funding. So the short range is the projects are a little more likely to happen. Then once we move toward completing some of the shorter range projects, we move longer range projects in. It's pretty straightforward in that aspect. The RTP, as we call it, includes all different modes of transportation, roadways, bridges, transit projects, bicycle pedestrian improvement projects, regional aviation, and not in Del Norte County, but rail projects in other counties is under the purview of the Regional Transportation Plan. This is mandated by the state. If we want to receive any state or federal funding, we have to prove as a region that that we've been discussing these projects and everyone's on the same page. So that's why we develop a regional transportation plan. The elements in here are goals, objectives, policy element, project lists, which we call the action element, and then the financial element. So in this regional transportation plan, there's over 110 projects that have been identified in the various modes of transportation. We kind of just stratify it like that because they have very different and separate funding sources. Over $326 million identified in the short range. That's in the next 10 years. We presume that $326 million is gonna be here. So we count on it because of the federal programs that filter down to the state programs, and then the state programs on their own. So that's a lot of money coming into Del Norte County, and I think the region's done a great job of identifying where that money should go. And then in the long term, long range projects, so year 10 to 20, there's another $860 million identified for those projects. That is an understatement because a lot of those long range projects haven't even gotten to design phase in order to develop an accurate cost estimate for the project. So that number is well under the actual cost of all those long range projects. So with this graph here, you can see 30%, 37% of the in the upper right of the identified projects. The percentage of funding going to those is for roadway projects. That's local, regional roads, not state highways. The bicycle and pedestrian projects represent about 37% of the project lists. Now, not all of those are funded, in fact, because those are basically, we're pulling projects that have been identified as a potential project, but not all of those have funding associated with them. So I'm going to move on to the next. Here we go. Let's see if that goes back. So here's the financial element. This is a cost summary, revenues versus cost. We stratify it by mode, and we stratify it by funding source. So over on the left there, you can see the different funding sources. The main thing I want to point out in this slide is the alignment of the projected funding versus the projected project costs. So you can see in the bottom right corner of this table, the $482 million, that is an unfunded identification of project need. That's the number that Tamara takes to the state and says, by the way, we're underfunded. We need more money for transportation in Del Norte County. So pretty valuable number there. So the final plan, we put the plan out for public review along with the environmental document, and we did receive quite a few comments from the state through Caltrans, from environmental groups, from the city, the county, and the transit agency. We've received some comments from tribal entities, and we've addressed the comments to the point that for the most part, all of the comments were addressed. There were some that weren't really pertinent to what we're doing here as a regional transportation plan, but we've identified that and responded to all the folks who have provided comments. And the final RTP is ready for your action today, and I'm happy to hang here and have a discussion or answer questions that might come up. So thanks a lot for listening to the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schwein, and for all your work on this and for your presentation. It was comprehensive. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? All right.
Hi, Jeff. I've got just a couple of small questions for you and Tamara. Looking at page 26, it looks at bridge sufficiency ratings, and I see the number of bridges in 2018 was 28, but then it apparently happened in 2020 that someone stole one of our bridges because now we're down to 27. So how did we lose a bridge? And also, we're down to 3 structures with sufficiency ratings from 0 to 50. I was kind of curious as to what those 3 bridges are and how urgently we need to get those replaced.
Yeah, so most of the bridges in the county are on state highways. And even if the bridge is a local jurisdiction's bridge, like city or county, Caltrans is the one that monitors and reports sufficiency ratings on the bridges. I'm not sure where the one went. It could have been decommissioned or something. We would maybe have to ask Caltrans. But we can certainly look into that and get you an answer back. So the sufficiency ratings, are identified on a regular basis. I believe it's annual by Caltrans, and we get the report. So that's what we are going on with those. And there is a plan for securing funding from the Federal Highway Bridge Program and improving those bridges up to a higher sufficiency rating or replacing them.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I was just curious about those items. And also, Tamara, I know you mentioned that this was not an exhaustive remake of the RTP, but I noticed that we, even though they changed their name last year, the Palikla tribe of the Yurok people, which used to be the Rezagini Rancheria, is still being referred to as the Rezagini. I don't know if this is the time to change that in the RTP or not, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
You know, I actually asked that question. And I asked that question. We had a similar comment from Caltrans about that, but I don't have any notice. I mean, and not just to me directly, but I don't have a notice. I haven't received any notice from anybody that's a formal notice. Making that name change is not a problem, but I felt uncomfortable making that name change without any kind of anything in writing that their name has changed. I mean, if the county could forward me their letter, that would make me happy. Caltrans could forward me their notice, that would make me happy. But I have nothing, and I've been asking.
I understand.
So
okay, that makes sense.
I was uncomfortable with it because I don't really have anything.
Yeah, and it was just last year, so maybe we'll get that in the future. I understand, though. Thank you, Tamara, for explaining that.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Short. Are there any other comments or questions on the RTP?
Tamara, remind me roughly how much could we expect in our regional transportation budget annually to put towards leveraging some of these projects identified in the short-term 10-year period?
For the Transportation Commission to leverage. In Regional Surface Transportation Program funds, we receive about $430,000 a year. We have some money in that account right now, and that account is what we most often prioritize for local projects for match funding. So if the city or county need match funding for anything, they generally look to that account first. Where are we with the RSTP funding? And we have, I would have to go back and look, I hate to guess, but we have about 500,000 in there right now. And that account there's not a timely use of funds mandate on that. There's, it's a fund source that everybody enjoys because it's not tied to a pile of rules and administration. You still have to follow a lot of rules, but it's just not a paperwork-heavy kind of process for the Transportation Commission to award funding to one of our local partners, the city, the county, a tribe, the airport, the harbor, the whoever. It's not just city and county. And so that's the primary source. We also receive a smidgen of pedestrian and bike funds from the Transportation Development Act, which is a transit funding source that's targeted toward ped bike projects, and that's about $14,000, $15,000 a year, depending on how the TDA is coming in. It's been, just depends on how the Transportation Development Act fund account comes in. So it's a percentage of that. It's the 2% fund.
Tamara, is it fair to say that those items identified in the short-term plan have been programmed at this point in time?
No.
And if they have not been programmed currently on those 10-year short-term projects, specifically in the 37%, which are roadways, local roadways and streets, and the 37%, which is the peds and bikes, what does that number look like? How big is it for those ones that fall into that category? I'm not sure if Jeff broke it down like that, but I'd be curious.
Jeff, can you help me out with that? What's the 37% of the, I don't have the document up in front of me right now. I mean, it would be a math problem, 30% of the 10-year.
30, yeah.
That was just 37% of the projects that were identified in the 10 years were roadway projects.
Okay, it didn't break it down by short-term and long-term?
No.
Okay.
Yep,
So
that was
it's-
overall.
So it's 37% of the projects, not 37% of the dollars.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if there's a way, Jeff, if we could better identify of those short-term projects, what those numbers look like, and more specifically for local streets and roads, and then the ped and bike areas.
Oh, sure.
That would be.
Yeah, we have those numbers. They're in the RTP table 5.2.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, Jeff. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, give me a sec.
No, please take your time. And while you're taking a look, that's all the questions I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from other commissioners? Any public comment? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission for, did you want to hear the answer to that?
I could hear it after. It's not going to matter specifically for the determination of accepting TP.
Okay. All right, well, I will accept a motion at this time for the RTP.
I'm sorry. I will move that we adopt Resolution 2025-1, approving the 2024 Norte Regional Transportation Plan and mitigated negative declaration.
Second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please pull the vote.
Commissioner Dooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Altman,
Yes.
Jesse Robertson,
Yes.
and Chair Greeno.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to our next item under policy administrative items, it's our 2025-2026 overall work program.
Jeff, I don't know if you're pulling up that data Okay.
Sure. Yeah, do you want to hear it now? I got a spreadsheet.
Sure, just go ahead and post it before we move on to the next topic.
Okay, yeah, real quick. So this is the table that identifies those short and long range. So you see in the middle, short range 1 to 10 years, long range 11 to 20. The roadway projects for local roads are these funds right here in the short range, $5.9 million, $7.4 million. And then these are all the different funding programs. Oh, wait, no, up here. These are the funding programs for local roads, 43 million in the short range, 43 in the long range. So I don't have the actual percentages, but easy numbers to get.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Yep. Happy to share that table too, but that's in the RTP.
All right, we appreciate you pulling that up for us and answering that question. Now we will move on to our overall work program.
So the overall work program, I'm going to need to pull this up. I should have printed it. The overall work program is the work of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission. And so we run on a state fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. And every year we go through this process of deciding what is our next year's work and then doing the work. And we do that in partnership with the TAC. The TAC is really the leader in the development of the overall work program. So that's the 2 members of the city, 2 members of the county. The California Highway Patrol comes in occasionally. Transit's very involved. And the harbor is involved also in that process. And those are our, and Caltrans. And Caltrans is involved, and those are our TAC representatives.
Tribal also on the TAC.
The Yurok tribe has a member on the TAC, yes. They have a voting member on the TAC. Other tribes are welcome to participate. It takes a bit of administration because it's in statute who's a TAC member, but everybody's welcome to our TAC. If more tribes want to participate, I've had some interest in the past, but if you cannot make a commitment to attend the meetings, it starts messing with the quorum. So we have to be careful about the long-term commitment to serving on the TAC because it becomes in statute. So the Yurok tribe has been participating in for the last year pretty consistently.
Hey, have we done any outreach recently to any of the other local tribes?
I talk to them regularly.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't done formal outreach, but
Okay.
I talk to, the tribal members working on projects on an ongoing regular basis. We have partner projects. They are working on projects, and I attend some of those meetings. The Tallawah-Dani, for example, they have a planning grant, and I've attended some of their meetings, and we check in.
Okay.
They know who to call.
Okay.
We've had this conversation multiple times over the last 15 years. So that's how the process works. It starts with a technical advisory committee. We hash out what kind of work we're going to be doing. That's what's in the agenda packet today, is the kind of work that we're going to be doing. Most of the items in the overall work program are just standard work items, things that we have to do to stay compliant and legal with the state of California. So I'm going to do this from memory. I should know it. The regional transportation plan regional planning is work element A, and that's all the meetings I attend or all of the work that we do that isn't specifically tied to a project. And it includes all the Caltrans meetings, all of the reviews of funding sources, all of the access, all of the changes in the state, the Regional Transportation Planning Agency meetings, which is the formal name of the Local Transportation Commission. That's like what we are. We're a Regional Transportation Planning Agency. So it's all of that general work. Work element B is about the development of the overall work program. Work element C is primarily about public outreach and public input and partnerships. Work element D is about our TIP development, our Transportation Improvement Program development, and that's the way that we administer the State Transportation Improvement Program funds. for our region. They're called STEP. You'll hear that term. But right now, the only area of funding that we spend in that area is planning and programming and monitoring funds. So you'll see that in there. And work element E is the Transportation Development Act administration in several areas. And those are transit-related. That's transit-related work. Work element C, work element, what is it? Where am I? BCDE 3 is about the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council. Again, it's about how transit, collecting a group and having meetings about how transit serves all of our transit-dependent population in our community. And so that's D, let me think. We have, that's E, the F is our safe call box system. And so the call boxes are part of the work of the Transportation Commission. And then we will have a work element G, and work element G is going to be, I may have the numbers wrong, but work element G this year is going to be the coastal trail from Beachfront Park to Preston Island, and working with the city of Crescent City to administer a planning process, perhaps up to 30% design. We don't have the scoping figured out yet, but administer a planning process with public input from the community about how to improve the coastal trail to make the pedestrian and bike path from Beachfront Park to Preston Island within the city limits more accessible, and to connect in a reasonable way with the county's work that they did a few years ago in really doing everything that the county did, everything that it could do within the limits of the right-of-way to improve the pedestrian and bike facilities on Pebble Beach Drive within the county's area. And so things are a little bit hit and miss still with the city, and we're really taking a hard look at the designated coastal trail areas. We may look at other pathways also, but that's where our focus is starting, is what's the coastal trail. I think in the long run, we will have better success at a full project development if we stay on the coastal trail path, as opposed to moving off the coastal trail and getting onto city streets that are not part of the coastal trail. Just long-term funding implications of that, I think, are going to be advantageous to the city to really focus on the coastal trail. And then, as we discussed extensively last month, our carbon reduction program funding, we weren't certain about that funding and what was going to happen with it, but that funding is formula funding. And so my understanding is that funding is secure because it's federal funding, but it's federal formula funding. And so that funding is in statute, and the work that's in the overall work program for that is to address the zero emission type active transportation work. So it's zero emission vehicle infrastructure. We have a plan for that. It'll need updated in a few years. We're going to start out by focusing on our active transportation plan. It hasn't been updated since 2017, and the bulk of the work is going to be focused on that. There are a couple more funding years potentially with this funding source, and I expect that in a couple years from now, we will be taking a look at the transit plan update and using the funding for transit planning. But again, this funding source is carbon reduction program funding, and we're packaging the work in a way that addresses carbon reduction in Del Norte County in a way that's manageable, focuses on planning, because we have such a small amount of money that spending it on a construction project for federal funding isn't reasonable. And it's not viable at all for this first cycle or two because of all the steps that we'd need. So those are some decisions down the road, but given the very small amount of federal funding, I expect that we will keep this money in the planning area and not attempt to federalize a project with this amount of money. everything is different with it. The paperwork is different. The administration of this program is different. So that's the overall work program for the 25-26 year. This is our first detailed look at it in its entirety. What typically happens now is I will receive direction from the Transportation Commission to move forward with the development of the overall work program, or you'll recommend some changes to the overall work program products, and I'll go back to the desk, meet with the TAC. We'll talk about whatever changes the Transportation Commission would like to see. I prepare a draft document. It ends up being about 32, 35 pages, and I submit it to Caltrans for comment. They'll get comment back to me, and then this will come back to the commission. The overall work program will come back to the commission for adoption in probably April or May, depending on the timing. We are going to get a little bit of extra RPA funding. I have no idea what that's going to be. If you take a look at the math, it'll be maybe $10,000, $12,000. But we haven't heard yet, so it's not a lot of additional money. We will receive some additional money. We don't know how much. I'm anticipating that money will be added to the coastal trail work from Beachfront Park to Preston Island. Hoping to get that work up to a 15% design, maybe a 25% design, so we can have, preliminary funding estimates for projects, for a project cost. It'll put the city in a better position to apply for funding in the long run if we can push that beyond planning to perhaps up to a 25% design, which is the maximum that we can go with the planning funds that we can't have. We can't go beyond 25% design with planning funds. Maybe it's 30. Shoot, I'm somewhere in there. Could be 30% design. It's somewhere in there.
All right. Okay. So, just looking for consensus. Do we have consensus for Tamara to work on this? All right.
All in favor? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Do we have any public comment on this? I apologize.
This is a meeting. You might as well get up and say something.
You're talking about exactly the same kind of thing that I was. When you're talking about the coastal trail, is that the same as Pebble Beach Drive in that segment? Some of it?
Some of it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
some of it is.
Okay.
But, when you were talking earlier, not to be off topic here, but let's talk after the meeting.
Sounds great.
I would love to walk that with you.
Yeah, great.
If you're up for walking with it one day.
I do it all the
can
time.
Explain it, so do I. So I can sort of share with you some of the limitations and the strengths of what we have now.
Yeah, great. Okay. No further comment. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for your comments. Bringing it back, we have consensus then. Thank you for your work so far and the work you're going to do. Moving on to our discussion items, Caltrans milestone report.
The milestones report's in your agenda packet. It's the December report. We receive this quarterly. I don't think that we had talked about it, but I wanted to just put it on the discussion items if any of you had questions about it. Jesse Robertson is here. He could answer the questions, or we could bring answers back to the next meeting. If you had any questions.
One for Jesse.
All right.
Just the one glaring red mark that doesn't have any money attached to it, Jesse, the middle mile broadband for 169 there in Klamath. I know that the folks in Klamath are really anxious to get better broadband access, but it's odd that this has no money attached to it, but it is an approved project. It was supposed to break ground last month. I'm sorry, December 2024. So I just kind of wondering what's the scoop on that project, if you know.
Yeah, good question. I know I had only recently, maybe this week or possibly last week, had heard about that myself. I do know that there has been a lot of uh, funding cutbacks in the broadband program. I don't know if it's related to that. It could be, it could be a matter of, uh, has it met the milestones to receive that funding? I'll have to look into that, and we can get you guys a response because I have only just heard rumblings about here's an issue that's popped up. So without really knowing much about it myself, I'm just going to have to look that up, and we can provide that back to you. Sorry about that.
No, that'd be great. That's fine. I understand not having the answer to the weird questions on the tip of your tongue. Appreciate it, though.
Sure.
All right. Do we have any further questions or comments? Okay. So no actions required on this item because it's just discussion. Moving back to, so at this time, we will adjourn as the Transportation Commission and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And we have to accept the changes that we made, right? As the
I move we approve the actions taken by the Policy Advisory Committee.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept these items. Do we have any public comment? All right, bringing it back to the commission for a vote.
Okay, Commissioner Altman,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Dooley,
Yes.
and Chair Greeno.
Yes. Oh, you know what? And I think I forgot our reports. Do we have anybody on the commission that has any reports for the good of the order?
I do have one. Just thought I'd bring the Transportation Commission up to speed on actions by the county to amend our strategic plan to lobby specifically to the state legislature to impact change on Highway 199, specifically in Hyuchi and Gasky. There's been quite a bit of outpouring over the last decade and a half for traffic calming within those two communities. The state highway speeds have been increasing dramatically, and under state statute, the 85 percentile, which all speed is calculated by within our state highway system, has continually increased the speeds within those transportation corridors. So, for instance, the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit that we have currently in Hyuchi, that is posted, isn't really the actual speed limit, it's 55. It's because people's average speed at the 85 percentile has increased so dramatically as their comfort level in their vehicles increase, so does that speed. And so we're getting increased number of near misses, and in addition, a lot of conflict between pedestrian, bicycle, and other walks of life, especially during our tourist season. And so the county has approached our lobby, in this case, Sean Yoder in Sacramento, and requested of Assemblyman Chris Rogers, who appears he might carry some legislation on behalf of the county. Right now, in conversations with Assemblyman Rogers' staff, they may dilute some of the language that we originally proposed, only to include more rural counties as part of that legislative package. However, we are working with our lobby, Sean Yoder, to see if we can amend it back to what we had, because it's more specific to public lands and not necessarily one that would reduce the speed limits enough. What was proposed would only take that speed limit down 5 miles per hour, wouldn't really impact where we need to be within those congested areas. So our hope is to continue to have conversation, but at least we have a placeholder at this point in time and assemblyman willing to have the discussion.
Chris, is there a chance that Caltrans would put advisory mile per hour signs up, similar to what they have in Smith River? Maybe Tamara has the answer.
Tamara does, I do, but Tamara could answer also.
There are advisory signs up, but advisory signs are not the speed limit. They are advisory. And so what ends up happening is some folks will drive the advisory speed and others will be driving at or above the speed limit. And you set yourself up for some significant conflicts by the difference in speeds that people are driving. So for a while, I don't know what's still up, but there were advisory signs of 35 miles an hour. Some of the folks in Gasky were determined to drive 35 miles an hour to slow everybody down, but you have somebody coming through Gasky going 60 miles an hour. Now you have a high potential for a dangerous collision, and what ended up happening frequently, probably still is happening in Gasky, is that people are then passing in the two-way left turn lane in the center of the highway. So you have to be careful about having a large differential between the enforceable speed limit and the advisory speed. So I think that they've done a good job in the Smith River area with the flashing lights, with all of the treatments that have gone in there, but the Tallawahdaini Nation is still working, and good for them, to work with Caltrans to continue to slow speeds down in that area, because advisory speed is not the speed limit. So in terms of enforcement, you can't have enforcement if it's not the speed limit. You can't enforce an advisory speed. You can enforce safe driving conditions. I mean, because that's the actual speed limit, is the speed at which it is safe to drive, or the posted limit. So if you were in a collision and you were going 45 miles an hour and the speed limit was 55, you might still be cited for driving beyond the speed limit because you were driving at a speed that was unsafe. And we know that now because you crashed. But let's not crash and make that we'd rather find a better way. We had a lot of meetings with the community of Gasky, a lot of conversations with the Hayuchi community, and at the end of the day, we would all like for people to drive slower, but the fact is that posting a speed limit does not make people drive slower. It just doesn't. We wish it did. There are some folks in Gasky who don't believe that, but it doesn't. The data shows that changing the speed limit doesn't make people drive slower. It just changes the speed sign, and that's pretty much that. So that's where we are with the advisory signs for Gasky and Hayuchi. And, a cautionary tale. This legislative path was our only path forward.
I appreciate the explanation, and mostly because I do see the problems as you go through Smith River. So I didn't believe that was a solution, but I thought putting it out in the public, our thought process, because it's going to be, I don't know, this moving the 85 percentile mark for us seems like it's going to be a daunting task for us. So I just wanted to put that out there to see where Caltrans might have been in that process. So I appreciate that they're not going to do that.
To be clear, it's not Caltrans' process. It's our process as a county with the issue to lobby Caltrans as a state agency, CHP as a state agency, even though extremely supportive in this region for supporting the county's initiative, they cannot lobby. So it's our job with our lobbyists in Sacramento to really push forward those pieces. And I think we had an extremely reasonable approach that would have allowed for local input into amending those laws. But I'm afraid we've got a freshman assemblyman that really wants to see a larger impact, and I can't say I blame him. I just wish we could, I'm hoping we could steer it back in the direction that allows for effective change.
All right. Thank you for the update. Any updates from any other members? Karen? No? Okay. We did have a notice of completion for our Front Street G2 Play Street project yesterday at our meeting, and I'm thankful for the support from this commission as well as our federal and other local partners. It looks great.
Front Street's a village.
It's amazing.
It has taken the village and the neighbors' villages and everybody who wants to be in the village
And-
to move Front Street forward.
Yep, and the chant yesterday was 2 more blocks, 2 more blocks. So just 2 more until we get that squared away all the way to 101, and hopefully we can get a nice smooth transition from Front Street onto 101 and have it done for a little while until we have to do some more repairs on it. So, yep. So, thank you guys, and that's my report. And with that, I will adjourn us until our next regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m.